The Say Something podcast is brought to you by amomentwithmorris.com and blackblueprints.com. That's blackblueprints with a Z.com. I am Jermaine Morris here with the one and only Mr. Barry Accius.
Say something.
New intro. Here with the Say Something podcast.
Say something, say something, say something.
Where Barry and myself get together and talk about everything going on out here in this life and addressing things that not only we, as in me and Barry, but we as in everybody should be saying something about.
Most definitely.
Coming at you with episode 23.
We about to get to 40, baby.
Hitting you with that Jordan number.
That is a Jordan's number, huh?
23, yeah.
And LeBron, man. Don't forget LeBron now.
Well, hitting you with that Jordan number.
LeBron. We got to get our millenniums up to speed, man. It's LeBron's number now. They don't even remember Jordan playing.
All the references, you can't help but get it. He's, generational, though.
Yeah, definitely is.
They always try to, some of us a little longer in the tooth are always trying to bring our heyday up to these new kids. Like, y'all music ain't like our music. Y'all athletes ain't like our athletes. Y'all movies ain't like our movies.
I think that with a lot of the athletes, I probably guarantee you a majority of athletes back then would rather play right now.
Damn sure for the money. For
the money, for sure. Rules, how the game is being played in every profession. Yeah. And at the same time, medicine. That medicine and understanding the body a lot more. Certain players and just all of the professions, again, dealing with sports. You think about if Grant Hill was in this era, he would have probably lasted a lot longer because they would have figured out what was really going on with him. Yeah,
I think the only thing where that might be a slight difference are defensive football players would probably rather have played in the older era. Back when Dick Butkus was clotheslining, back when Mike Singletary was spearing, when Lawrence Taylor was just throwing folks down by the face mask,
and he was off coke too.
Yeah, but I think that's the only thing I think defensive players would probably,
he was so wild and crazy.
Defensive players would probably rather be playing in that era. But all that aside, new era, new day. We got to adjust, keep the basics intact, but adapt to the new stuff.
Most definitely.
A lot going on out here in the traffic.
Always. I just wanted to say, shouts out to all the graduates. I just had another graduation that I came to and went and saw and conquered. One of my daughters, Devonna Johnson, just graduated from Long Beach State. And
congratulations.
Her. Yes, cheers. Black girl magic, black excellence, black degrees, and I it's a beautiful thing, that whole process, right? And I was there, of course, just to be the mental support, the guidance, but at the same time, and through her 5 years of going to college, I was there for every step of the way. When she turned to AKA, when she moved from the dorms to an apartment, when she was thinking that she was going to drop out, it was just every step away. So I'm very proud of her, and I just know that understanding and planting the seed, being there, supporting, and not just supporting in a way of just giving great advice, but sometimes opening up the pocketbook, right?
Yeah.
Running a few checks and coming to visit when there's those holidays. Even though I don't deal with any of those holidays, they still have those holidays they celebrate, and with work schedule and school schedule, sometimes they can't come home with the family, going over there, supporting and just visiting and making them feel like, hey, you're doing a great job and you got support.
Because they need that constant support and to check it in and that sense of community long past when they turn 18.
Most definitely.
And that's got to be something that village mentality.
You have to practice it.
And not just looking for, once you turn 18, you got to get out.
Get the hell out of here.
But about preparing them for life even before 18. Like I've always likened parenting. If you're a parent of a teenage boy or girl, of a Cocker Spaniel or a Blue Jay, the job of a parent is to raise a self-sufficient, independent offspring that can survive and thrive without you.
Yes, sir.
So that when before they leave your house, that they have the tools that's necessary, because there's a lot of pitfalls out here to help them slip them up and trip them up. So it's about giving them the proper tools to maneuver on their own, and then being there for the support when they need it, and then the pat on the back like graduations when they do well.
Gotta celebrate those kind of things.
Yeah.
So with that being said, also, it's very unfortunate. I know we're going to touch on it, but I want to say rest in power to Richard Collins III. brother would have been graduating. He would have been in class in 2017, and unfortunately, due to white supremacists, due to this system of white supremacy, that we continue to not lock these individuals up, and these individuals continue to walk around lawlessly with their hate. Unfortunately, this brother didn't make that day, and it hasn't really made national news. I think it's got more attention because of the fact that they actually, on the chair that he would have been in, they actually put his gown and
they acknowledged his graduation. Yeah. It was just 3 days before his graduation.
Definitely, yeah. And when we always want to make sure that we're not putting all white people in a box of you are all racist, but we have to be very clear to understand that there is racism.
Yeah, typically I reserve the word gentleman, but I don't feel it applies to this guy. The defendant in this case, that such a young brother, he was 23, went to Bowie State University, and his life was cut short on some nonsense. He and his buddies were waiting for an Uber at like 3 a.m, and he was approached by this guy he'd never seen before in life, who more or less told him to get out of his way, and he was even puzzled at the request. And before he even realized what happened, a knife was plunged into his chest. And the friends tried to help him out, and even campus security came, and they tried to do CPR, but he died at the hospital 3 days before his graduation. And from all accounts of everybody who seemed to know him or go to school with him or interact with him, they said he was a great guy. Like, they said one thing when they spoke about him is this wasn't somebody who was going to potentially be a great person. They said they wanted, let's just be clear and address it. He already was a great person. And so, but when it pertains to the other type of people out there, the dude that the defendant, Sean Urbanski, the 22-year-old University of Maryland student, he was known being a part of a Facebook group that was a known white supremacist group where they had anti-Semitic, anti-women, anti-Latino, anti-black rhetoric. When they looked up the site, when they got dude into custody, they said it was just disgusting and despicable, the content that this dude was a part of. So, like you said, it's not a question of are all white people evil or racist. No. It's a question of shining the light on the ones that are and addressing their motives, because they're charging dude with first and second degree murder, but they're debating on it being a hate crime. And I don't think there's any debate. And, this dude need to get what he get. And I don't know if they got the chair out there.
I don't know. And but, just when you look at the things like Dylan Roof, and of course we talked about Charles Barkley and American and race, that segment, I still, like I said, again, I haven't caught on to it. I've got some information for some of my people that follow the show, that follow me on Facebook, and they're telling me, hey, it is a deep show, it's a good segment, you need to check it out. And I never know, I might go ahead and tap in and see it. But if a white person is not racist, then a white person suffers from their own white privilege. And when you have those things interlocked, when you have motive, and the motive is always to make you feel that you're superior to other individuals, when your history is detailed in genocide, your history is detailed in rape, your history is detailed in misinformation, your history is detailed in creating this unrealistic reality about other individuals, and the lack of empathy that you get from people that benefit from what is now America. It frustrates me that in 2017, not only do we have to have the conversation still, but we still look at black people especially as the problem, and we are almost to blame for some of the behavior that comes from our white counterpart. Like, literally, it doesn't matter if you're a CEO. It doesn't matter if you're a ball player. You're a threat to America if you're a black person. That part, and the fact that they've done such a great job when every time we've tried to move forward, whether it's mass incarceration, whether it's redlining, Jim Crow laws, the assassination of our leadership, the indictment of this so-called drug war on the black community. Every time we try to navigate and we push, we're met with such a punch of vengeance, as if we've done something to them first, and then are blamed at why we're in the condition that we're in, as if no one knows, as if any of these things that I said and plenty more has not happened. That's what I think frustrates me the most, that when we talk about racism, there's no accountability. When we talk about white privilege, there's no idea of the certain privilege that white people have, and then we always try to make it seem like it's as easy as you doing it and you're going to make it. And if we do it, the brushback that we get. I just got done talking. I came back from a retreat in Santa Cruz after just coming from LA. It's always busy, you're always making moves. And I sat and spoke with a black CEO, and he was explaining to me how even though he's a CEO, he still looked like as the N. You know what I mean? He still looked like as the Negro. He's not looked like as the equal. He still looked like as the Negro. And he has, especially the male counterparts, which are white, that always want to make it assume that they're the smartest ones in the room, when usually they're not.
Yeah, well, the narrative that's said about people is huge. And, narrative that, especially if you buy into a narrative that you didn't create, if you buy into a narrative that is said about you that wasn't created by you, that can definitely be detrimental to how you operate. And if you buy into the narrative said about other people that you don't know firsthand to be true, or you don't have a real world experience to support it, you got to be careful of that stuff too. And in this country, it specifically likes to create the narrative that anything that is a non-white Christian faction in some way, shape, or form is negative. So if you're a male, if you're a non-white Christian male, that anything that goes on, that you are somewhere in the mix to be at fault. If it's if it's a race issue where you're talking about another color, if you're dealing with another religion, this is a Christian nation. And whenever there's an issue from, say, an Islamic extremist or an Islamic terrorist group, the first thing that is pointed to is that this is an issue amongst all Muslims, and that all Muslims must be bad. Because if you're on this side of the world, Muslim seems like, based upon a narrative of this country, that Muslim seems bad. But we never think of what this country represents to the other rest of the world. Because you have to understand that if you're on the other side of the globe, this Christian nation bombed Syria. These Christian extremists bombed Afghanistan. These Christian extremists bombed Iraq. Like, we don't see it that way because that's not the perception that we have, and that's not the narrative that is spoken here. We'll address an Islamic group that bombs over here and say that's Islam. But we don't think about every person America bombs is a Christian extremist to them. So it's about being mindful of the narratives that are said about other people. And I think what goes into that is, and this is in no way to give them a pass, because I think that it was despicable behavior. Also, a shout out and rest in peace to all those lives lost at that concert in Manchester in the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
At the Ariana Grande concert. And why I think that they're saying ISIS, the Islamic group, is kind of claiming responsibility, and that's furthering that narrative about Islamic groups and Islamic people.
Yes, sir.
And why I think I want to give them the nod. This is the youngest that was killed in that group was 8. Like, it was 22 people lost their lives, 59 were hurt with a
How old was Tamir Rice again?
Roughly the same age. Yeah.
So.
Roughly the same age. And,
so we're going to go cry about that. And the thing about it, I'm not being insensitive at all.
Yeah.
But we got henchmen killing, young people every day.
Yeah. And that was a nail bomb, to give a perspective to what that would be in a group of people. And a nail bomb goes off, and a lot of people were actually killed in the trampling after the bomb went off. And since then, the United Kingdom is stiffing their security, that they're on red alert of this Islamic threat because there's supposed to be some intel that's floating around saying that some of these extremist groups are saying that children are no longer off limits, and that anybody who represents, I think it's kafir is the name, but really I think it translates to infidel. Anybody who's on the other side can get it. Is pretty much the philosophy now. Don't limit it to specific groups or whatever. Just anybody who plays for that team can get it. And so they're tightening up security, going on high alert, all that. And we as Americans are giving, our extra support and our outcry and our Instagram posts and our Facebook profile pictures as we give nod to the people over in the United Kingdom and this terrorist threat, worrying for the kids over there. But I pose the question, how much attention, how much support do we give to the quote unquote terrorist threat that is hurting our children over here? Because the children in the United States of America are under siege right now.
Most definitely.
There's constant the young brother who was just passed. He was a college student with a prosperous future, and his life was cut short from a complete stranger he didn't know. There's constant counts of police brutality against children. The law officer in Anaheim, who they're looking about addressing charges because he fired his handgun, his piece at a 13-year-old, who was in the presence of a 13-year-old, because he said the kid was disrespectful. Yeah. And when he tried to walk off, he tried to detain him. He was an off-duty police officer and tried to snatch up a child without addressing himself, and he shot a gun off around children.
Yeah.
We have constant cases of, teen violence and teen access to drugs and, teachers sleeping with students. There was the two cases back to back in Texas where a 27-year-old teacher got impregnated by a 15-year-old and a 25-year-old teacher got impregnated by a 13-year-old. You
hear about the teacher that got caught having sex with her student in the car?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Our kids, if the entire nation, the entire United Kingdom is on high alert worrying about their children now, the safety of their children from an Islamic terrorist group, are you on red alert right now worried about your children from this U.S. terrorist group?
Well, I think it goes deeper than just the children. It goes into everyone. And the funny fact is we could pretty much say on a lot of ways that people believe that our current president, Mr. 45, is a terrorist in the way he's pretty much terrorized certain Americans as he's been in office or before he got into office, with all the shenanigans, with all the threats, with all the cuts. So when you look at the scope of how we take such a public and national interest on other individuals or groups or countries, we never, ever, ever look at the scope of what's going on in our backyard or our backyard. We never really pay that much close attention to it because usually it's a bunch of black faces, so why even care for them? And I think that when you look at the many henchmen that have just gotten away with terrorizing the black community, I mean, just countless cases we can go through it. We'd be here all night. And once something happens, and I honestly think it's almost a theme. ISIS. Some will argue that ISIS was funded by America, was created by America. But we won't go in there with the conspiracies or the connect the dots, because that's, again, another part for another show, and we really would have to get our hands knee deep into that. But when you look at every time any tragedy happens, and we have countless tragedies down in Europe, America always seems to be the one with the golden baton to say we will stand for justice and freedom and liberation, and we won't stand for terrorist acts. But then you look at our scope of what's happened in just the last 5 years, you are wondering, like, oh, wait. Who are we really fooling? Like, are our kids really that safe? When you, again, I say it, and I have to be an idiot to think that these kids are just able to get these guns because they're just, they're just laying around on the streets before they can sit there and get a job, that to me is stressful, because how is that possible? How do our kids have so much access to these military style weapons? We're not talking about little handguns. We're talking about military style weapons.
Yeah, the idea, and realistically the concept is the same. You were correct in that most of the leaders globally were either put in place directly or co-signed by the United States government. Like if you go back from Bin Laden to Saddam Hussein to Noriega to anybody that we sit there and say that, oh, that's the guy. We know that's the guy because we put the guy there. And when it comes to those types of practices by terrorist groups where you're going after kids, where you're hurting people, where you're shooting people, we do that here. We're the same nation that will sit there and say we won't stand for terrorism against, men, women, and children. So we need to go over and bomb you because you were bombing your people, while we're the same people who were giving infants and adolescents poison water through their tap and telling them to bathe in urine colored water, which is deteriorating their skin and leading to all causes of lead cancer and lead poisoning, i.e. Flint, Michigan. There's no profile Facebook picture for Pray for Flint, Michigan. Because we don't have a narrative that says that's wrong. We'll sit there and say that, oh man, we need to go over there and address these people in Syria, because the treatment of those people by quote unquote those people is something that's deplorable, and we can't have that on our watch.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, in this nation, constant cuts to the educational system. The multi-billion-dollar federal cuts to the school programs nationwide, which is going to have children with antiquated resources, textbooks that aren't up to code, cutting staffing, doubling up on class load. So you're going to
school programs
across the board. So you're going to say we need to go into these other areas. We need to uproot this regime because they're not giving a promising future to their young people. Yet you come back here and we're doing the same.
Yeah.
We need to go over there and address who's in charge because of the mistreatment that they have for their women. Mm-hmm. Yet you look at how women are treated here.
Wow.
Making roughly 60 some odd cents to the dollar. Where
you have to, with the women, the protection of the women, black girls and Latino girls can go missing and no one really makes a big ruckus about it. You have white males in positions of power where you will pay $13 million just to keep them in pocket until finally the backlash is so much you then let it go. I mean, it's totally ridiculous, man.
So, when we start talking about these deadly regimes across the planet, these groups that are terrorizing their people, these groups that are starving their people, these groups that are ignoring their people. But yet, when we go, we may not be gassing our children like they do in other places, but poisoning them through the tap water, to me,
it's
we're talking
the same thing to me.
Yeah. When we will sit there and throw our infants and our elderly in a place with no kind of recovery, we incarcerate more people in this nation than any other place on the planet, though we are by far not the most populated nation on this planet.
And then you got to look at when you have to see. I saw one of the most troubling things, and I saw a lot of troubling things when I was in LA. But one of the most troubling things I've seen in quite a while was this single father. Early in the evening, his 4 kids was just, stationed on a sidewalk kind of down the street from my hotel by LAX. I saw them in the evening. Then I saw them in the morning in a different area. And he was just, had his little umbrella because it was pretty hot. And his 4 kids just were playing. So they had been sleeping outside or whatever place they could find refuge. Like, this is their home base.
Yeah.
Like, that to me is just as disturbing as seeing a mother and her single children. You know what I'm saying? And her her being out there without any help. When we look at how we are trying to be these global ambassadors, setting the agenda to what peace looks like, setting the agenda to what harmony looks like, and how you're supposed to treat fellow man, woman, and child, like, we get an F minus because we don't practice what we preach. I think the fact with America, we love the picture that we've painted a lot more than actually painting the picture. Because the picture that they paint, you would think that it's there, but in the reality, this is what we have, and this is what you see. You have tent cities in every city. You have homelessness not only for the adults, but for the children. You have drugs coming from God knows where in our streets, in the hands of our young kids. You have weapons of mass destruction, not only with weapons that are bombs and guns, but a cell phone that has deteriorated the minds of our children. You have a lack of truth, being centered around the education that creates a lot of our kids to feel inferior and not believe in themselves because they look at it like, well, this is my path. And then you have the golden truth that America is truly about. If you don't got it rich, you don't got it at all. And that's the golden truth. If you don't got it rich, you don't got it all, because more and more we're seeing the gap between poor and rich. You're either poor or you're rich.
Yeah, because across the nation, not even nation, globally, so when we address other nations that are quote unquote in the wrong, whether it be the way they treat their people, whether it be their position, whatever, basically it's because most of those are dictatorship type places where it's a shot caller and I'm taking care of me and my people and everybody else can kick rocks. Well, the fact that this is a capitalist society, it changes the game that everybody believes that they could potentially be a somebody. So when you have a nation that is built upon, I get mine, now you get yours.
Gotta get mine. You gotta get yours.
You can end up where the degrees of corruption, the degrees of exploitation and manipulation, of just outright just wrongness, it can run rampant. It's where you have why young kids have access to military grade firepower. It's the same reason why we sell it to other nations. It's for the dollar. If you put that stuff out there in the streets and start making your transactions, there's a big picture that for that community that's suited around money. It's the same reason why you've got kids with access to high grade pharmaceuticals. These kids are getting D's in chemistry, yet they're getting access to everything that they need to manufacture synthetic opiates across the nation. Like, these aren't kids who just figured this out one day while they was trolling through Instagram and all of a sudden somebody posted a formula and they all just copied and pasted and started screenshotted it and started duplicating it. Yeah. There are some people higher up who are doing this to your children. There are some people higher up who are putting this in these communities. The same reason why you can get your hands on drugs is the same way you can get your hands on guns. If we were another nation, we would be a regime that had to be stopped. Like, if this was the same practices, the poisoning of our people, the belittling of our women, the mass incarceration of the people, the police state, which goes on so many levels, the miseducation and misinformation and lack of funding for not only medicine but for books amongst our infants and our elderly. If this was going on anywhere else in the world, not only would we have a meme and a profile pic for those poor people, but we would demand that some changes be made and that those people be stopped.
No, most definitely.
But the fact is that this is how we live, and we've become so numb to the practices because that's the way we do it, and that's not the narrative that we say about how we get down. We'll be real quick to say what those folks over there do. But we just, it's a blind eye to how we move over here. Yeah. When it comes to what goes on in your city, it's that's not my problem. But yet we're the same people that say we need to pray for those folks over there. We need to be there for those people over there.
Yes, sir.
May God bless all those people who were hurt in this city as you step over the homeless man and his starving child.
And we are still in a fight about pushing certain individuals out of the country, about building a certain infrastructure to stop others from coming in this country. And then we have the audacity to talk about other countries and this ISIS that comes from nowhere, and always when it happens, always takes the blame.
Yeah, I mean, when you and the thing is ISIS at this stage of the game is almost what the Bloods and Crips are in America. That these are just like any city you go to, any major city in America, there's Bloods and Crips.
Yes, sir.
Who have absolutely nothing to do with the original onset or if it's original inception. We just one person moved here and just started up a group and they kind of do their own thing. And that's where a lot of stuff happens. Like we just attach everything and call it these different groups. We have all these narratives about how we see things going on. But all I'm saying is that as we worry about the international terrorism, and I take nothing away from anybody who's fallen victim to any of those plights.
Not at all.
If your nation of origin, where your grandma's from, your parents from, you had to flee from, or people you know or people you don't know who are getting bombed and mistreated and abused, the women being raped, the children being forced into high labor situations or even into the military as young as 6, 7, 8 years old, my heart goes out to those people. And I recognize that those are atrocities where those people live. But I also recognize there are atrocities where I live.
Exactly.
And I also recognize that there are ways and things that are done in this country that need to be addressed with the same degree of passion, with the same degree of efficiency, and the same degree of emotion. The emotional outcry for our people here like we do for people other places.
And it's not. And that's the illest thing, the most frustrating thing about how it all spins around. Like how all of a sudden we're in an uproar about this, but we're not outraged about that. But it's always been the thing. As you talked about the Bloods and the Crips, it's almost like that old school thought that a black person did it. You know what I'm saying? Or blame it on the black person. So of course, even if it wasn't ISIS, it was going to be ISIS. Because it's just that formula now, right?
Yeah, Muslims are just everywhere.
And then
just ruling the world.
Then it helps create the rhetoric that Trump is pushing, the propaganda that he's trying to pose on the American people, and especially his supporters, who at this time, with all of the clear things that he's doing that's going to affect their lives shortly, it's going to still get them to still say, but we want them out of our country. And when we say our country, this country does not belong to you if you cannot recognize the people that it belonged to first. And that becomes the white privilege that I discussed. That becomes the things that we talk about on an everyday basis. And as we say, we have to say something about, we have to clearly look at that privilege of really believing that you were the all great creator of this country, and that's so false.
I think that part of this is that, and speaking on, like I said, the narrative of the white Christian male, because it's not necessarily white people, because when you start moving higher up on the status pecking order, women start getting knocked down with everybody else.
Yeah.
So this misconception, if you are a Caucasian woman, that you think that when you get to the mountaintop that you are viewed as equal to white men.
Yeah, Hillary Clinton found that out.
Yeah, you're going to learn the hard way that ain't the case. So when they start addressing these narratives about how stuff is, I think a lot of it is that they don't care. It's a capitalist society. It's mine because I took it. It's mine because it's mine. Like I don't.
It's not mine because I borrowed it. It's mine because I took it.
Like I think this is a way to put it. Do you know why they call Native Americans Indians?
Why?
Because when Columbus and the boys, when those first pilgrims, those settlers got here, they believed that the people that they saw were Indians like India. Indians.
Ah.
Now, here's the cold piece, and this will let you know where that privilege comes in and why the level of disrespect that goes the way that this society works. So it was established that I thought you guys were Indians, so I'm calling you Indians. We're not Indians. Well, I'm going to call you Indians anyway. Like, I recognize I'm not where I thought I was, and I recognize you're not who I thought you were.
Yes.
That's like if I came across a family of Mexicans, and I said, hey, man, look, this is my Puerto Rican homie, Jose.
Huh?
I'm not Puerto Rican, I'm Mexican.
Yeah.
This is my Puerto Rican friend, Jose. I'm going to call you Puerto Rican anyway, and from now on, you're Puerto Rican.
Yeah.
Like, that level of disrespect, like that level of because I can, is the blueprint for the United States of America. Like, if you really wanted to put something...
And it's a very scary kind of attitude to have.
It is, but I think if you truly wanted to put what America's really built on the Statue of Liberty, because I can, is really how this country gets down. I'm going to...
As we say something, they're saying, because I can.
Because I can. Why do you incarcerate who you feel like incarcerating
Because
as opposed to who's committing the crimes? Because I can. When there's an overwhelming number of every statistical category that is done by the United States Justice Department on the majority of drug trafficking and drug use in this nation, it is done by Caucasian males. But yet the overwhelming number of people who are incarcerated for drug trafficking and drug abuse are black males. Why do you lock up more black males for a crime that is perpetuated by 5 times more likely by a Caucasian male? Because I can. Why do you pay women so substantially less for a job that they statistically do not only as well but better than men?
Because I can.
The most the highest number of advanced degrees that are coming out of any university in America are black women. Black women are earning more advanced degrees than any other group. That's more than Asian males, than white males, than Hispanic males, than Asian females, than anybody. No one gets more advanced degrees in the United States of America than black males, but they are paid substantially less than all of their counterparts. Why? Because I can. Why is the school districts that are cut where all the funding goes for after-school programs in areas where it is proven that they are beneficial, but yet are not, but are the first to get cut in areas that need it the most? Because I can. Like, the reason why this country, why did you poison so many people in a town and refuse? There's no recovery. There's been no change. You got people drinking piss-colored water for the last 3 years, bathing in something, getting cancer and lead poisoning. Why? Because I can. Why did you go back on the Native American oil pipeline where you had this big protest and what everybody looked the other way? You put some deals back in place to get back to digging and already had oil spill across these Native American lands and people being poisoned? Because I can. That is the American dream, ladies and gentlemen.
Because I can.
Because I can. So when we talk about these narratives that are said about other people and other cultures of other faiths and how they getting down where they are and they need to be stopped and they need to be moved, we just might want to look in this U.S. backyard a little bit closer and worry about the people that are here. Because our children are catching hell. Talk about the drug that's going through. We talked about it briefly a little while back, but I don't know if we addressed it on the podcast. And this is more so of a public service announcement. There's a drug.
Not Nancy Reagan style, right?
Nah, there's a drug that's flowing through the U.S. like crazy called fentanyl. They think that's the stuff Prince was on. And it's a synthetic opiate. Opiates are huge right now.
Yeah. Mainly
Mainly used by Caucasians, men and women, and children. It's the same drug that Vicodin, Oxycontin, morphine is. It's that line. It's an opiate, but it's synthetic. It's 50 to 100 times more potent, and it's readily accessible and easy for these kids to get their hands on. They're slinging it through high schools. This is something that's making its way through the nation, but not really publicized like it should because of its demographic. You know, it's Caucasian. Heroin and opiate use is a white crime.
Yeah.
You know, that's who's mainly doing it.
Right.
Black folks typically don't shoot up heroin.
No.
That's just not really our thing. We don't sell it typically.
We've had our moments.
But that's not our go-to. We was never the black tar kingpins.
Yeah.
Not statistically. Like, who was doing it more?
Who was doing it more? But we've had some major players that was playing in the game. So
yeah, but every major player was a third-tier player on the team for who was moving it.
Yeah.
Because when we were shipping it in,
but you got to remember, they always are going to put the black hat on the black guy and create it as he was the one that was the hero and kingpin.
I get that. And why this is so important, and why saying something about not only for our child's safety, but watching how this is going to play out.
Yeah.
Mark this podcast when you hear it on your calendar, because they just had the 95% cuts to the anti-drug task force, and this is a synthetic opiate, meaning this is not something that you need to fly in plane after plane, and deal with Escobar anymore. This is some lab shit. So this stuff is going to be made by a certain group of people, but trafficked by another. So these are the dirty games that this nation does.
Yeah.
So when we start looking at what these deadly regimes, these terrorist groups, let's look at the practices of how we do things here.
Americans have been full-on terrorists from a long time ago. They've terrorized the black community. They continue to terrorize the black community. We don't even need to go through the shelves upon shelves of books that we have on how the system has been in the ass of the black man and the black woman. We don't even have to go. I don't even think we have to detail it because it's the facts. But the funny thing about it is, when you talk about these things, people will act like they don't understand what you're saying. Yeah. Like the FBI, am I correct? Was the FBI or the CIA? Hoover was the FBI, right? The CIA?
J. Edgar Hoover was the CIA, I believe.
CIA had
Central Intelligence Agency.
Full-scale attack on black leadership in the earlier days when black power was on the come up. Yeah. Right? This was a full-scale attack. Then you turn around with Reaganomics. You turn around with Nixon war on drugs.
Well, before you even got to Reaganomics, you go back to Lyndon B. Johnson, who came in to divide the family.
There you go, Lyndon B. Johnson. Gotta find. You can't forget about Lyndon B.
If you didn't know, he was the one that implemented that if a woman was to be on any form of state assistance, any kind of welfare government aid, she had to kick her man out the house. Yeah. But that only applied to black women who had to kick their man out the house. That was the onset of separating the family.
Yeah. Go on. And so then you go into our good friend Bill Clinton, and
Slick Willie, what they call him.
Oh man, Slicky Willie, and he had the saxophone. He played it nice, and I mean he was at the Razorback games, and you really felt he was on Arsenio Hall.
He did not have sexual relations with that woman.
And he was getting some head at the Oval Office. So we were like, hooray, that is my president all day. And he didn't inhale. So the whole thing was like, that's my guy. And he and his wife, a.k.a. Miss Super Predator, created what we now deal with, the mass incarceration, the 3 strikes law. That is, if the black community wasn't damaged, wasn't on life support, then
that was the haymaker.
That was the haymaker. That put us in critical.
Yeah,
right there.
The mandatory minimum sentencing.
So we have these things constantly. I mean, constantly shaking a community, individuals that are just trying to lift themselves up out the cave. And this is not a poor as me. This is, I dare any community, any other culture besides black to have all this stuff on them on a regular.
Yeah.
And see how you come up out of that.
And before folks start to get the whole, my group was this, my group was that.
We're talking about a continued channel that don't stop.
But that's the point. There are people who will say that, well, my family, when they came over, and it was like that for 20 years.
Yeah.
It was like that for 5 years. It was like that for 17. It was like that for 22.
We're talking trap after trap after trap.
We're talking centuries.
Oh.
So just because there's folks who like to get their arms up and that, well, my father came over from this and he didn't speak the language. Yes, but there were no systemic laws put on the books for the sole purpose of stopping your grandfather from prospering.
Yes, sir.
There were no Irish laws on the books.
And there are things right now in certain communities here in diverse California that says in the paperwork in the deeds about selling to color folk. because it was written so long ago. And that's why I say where people are gung-ho about constitutions and people are gung-ho about pledge allegiance, some of that stuff got to change, man. Sometimes you got to go back, reanalyze it, and say this does not fit for the times that we are in right now, and say we got to change some wording, we got to get some more people in the room, because that Constitution was not built in the name of black people.
No, it was. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, while every single last person who signed was a slave owner.
And you know what? Hold on. No, let's back up for a second.
Okay.
That's the problem I think a lot of black people just have.
Yeah.
Because they even will fall back into Constitution, Memorial Days, and Independence Days, and argue back the fact of this and that. And I had an argument with a friend about the Constitution, and I said, yo, that stuff was not written with us being the people.
Yeah.
We weren't even considered a 3/5 of a man or a woman.
Yeah.
We were considered cattle. Like, we were enslaved at that time.
Yeah.
So how are we going to get steak? They're talking about themselves. And see, when you can't or refuse to right a wrong, it continues to bring its ugly head back up again. So that's why, though my heart goes out to what happens in other countries, you know, when Syria got bombed, you know, what happened at the concert, I say, damn, that's messed up. But we just had at least 3 or 4 cops go free for killing unarmed black folk. We continue to ask questions that we're not getting answers about Flint, Michigan. We have young people that are just trying to survive for the basic essentials, that are killing each other just to keep a little food on their table and a roof over their head. And then every program that exists to kind of stabilize or get people a head start, not even a head start, but just a moment of clarification on, yes, I'm in a tight jam right now, but I have some help to get myself back together again. Yeah. Slicing, dicing, and pushing it away. And all you see is, again, the gap between the poor and the rich get bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah,
the looking at where people address what the Constitution means, something that's important for the United States of America, it's a nation of laws. And why that matters is because regardless of what somebody tells you on TV or how they talk to you, you know, on the street, it's a nation of laws. What's written in black and white is how this works. So where we as a people need to get together, we need those constitutional lawyers. We need those people who are challenging these different points and amendments. Those people who are getting together saying this needs to be addressed. This needs to be changed. This needs to be like we used to do. Yeah. There was a time period, the Thurgood Marshals and all them, who used to sit there and say, we need to go back to this. We need to address this. This needs to be looked at. This needs to be changed. We've gotten away from that. Like when you don't address the law, the actual letter of the law, how stuff operates, you're banking on somebody's feelings that day. You hoping somebody's feeling a little compassionate today. Uh-huh. You know, as for how we've been moving and operating, like just keeping it just for what we need to do, you know, understanding what it is. You know, like you talk about, you know, that this Constitution, this nation was not built with our prosperity in mind.
Not at all.
The fact is that black people who prosper in America is not because this nation is given so many opportunities. It's in spite of this nation's history.
Most definitely.
You know, black people are prospering in spite of the atrocities that have happened, in spite of the hurdles and complications, in spite of the vicious and malicious attacks, blatant racism, murder, rapes, abuse of power, resources, finances across the board. We are not doing well because somebody was being nice. We're doing well because we persevered through a bunch of BS.
But hold on. What? Hold on, real quick.
Go ahead.
They don't want to hear that.
Well, the problem is that the reason why that narrative is so important for us. Forget what they feel. Forget what anybody else thinks about us. Why that's important for us is because we now have a generation that doesn't know that.
Yeah.
They're under the belief that America got my back.
Yeah. I just got done talking to a 23-year-old, and he was oblivious to like the Black Wall Street story. But go ahead.
Yeah. So if you grow up under the narrative that because I can applies to me, that umbrella of how things move and operate is looking out for me, you lose that bite.
Yeah.
Like you lose that fight, you lose that dog in you, you lose that ambition, that drive of on any given day, some BS might hit my doorstep, so I have to constantly stay prepared. I have to be the best version of myself. I have to work with the community that I've got. I've got to invest economically, socially, educationally. I've got to be inclined to be plugged in to my people.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
But because we've removed the narrative of all of the things that have happened to us as a people, our young people now don't have the chip on their shoulder that they need. They said the reason why immigrants do well when they come here is because they haven't bought into the American ideology.
Well, and I also think that as well, because I've talked to them, there's just such a cultural barrier and language barrier that it's almost like it forces them to get on their shit.
Yeah, well, if you come over here from somebody else, you don't come over believing that somebody's got you. You come over believing that this is a place where it's possible to prosper.
And what we do is we are believing
we expect to prosper.
Well, and I figure and I expect, but also believing, and will beg for the rights. Like that's the problem that I feel that we have. We are more or less saying, hey, at the end of the day, don't really like this, but I'll beg you 10 times over, hoping that you'll change your mind. Instead of saying, I get it. Like, how many times do Negroes need to get it? Like, what point do we see that history has proven to repeat itself time after time after time, and then we go for saying separation is the best solution? And that's not saying, again, we're not dealing with anybody, but the way you deal with someone on a equal basis, meaning that you got yours, I got mine, and now let's go ahead and see where we can work in between.
And agreeing with that, and so something that whenever I explain to people, one of the jobs I've done over the years is done some consultation work for businesses. Okay. And people who are coming up, who are trying to do something. I said the first thing where most people go wrong in business is that they don't show up with value. Like they don't bring value to the table. Yeah. They show up with their hand out talking about, can you help me?
Yeah.
Like what can you help me? I'm trying to get this off the ground. Can you help me out with some money? Can you help me out with an opportunity? Can you cut me a break? But they bring no value to the table. So the person who they're talking to is, once again, unless they're just feeling nice that day, has no reason to do anything for them.
Yes.
We show up in this society, a capitalist system with zero value. We show up on the hook me up, help me out.
Yeah.
Because we don't practice group economics. We don't monetize what we do. Like we're not power players in what's going on. So when you show up to the table with your hand out, you get what somebody feels like giving you.
Yeah.
When you circle your wagons, get your stuff together, and now bring something to the table, that's how you get leverage.
Yes.
You bring value to the table and you can barter across the board. Like you have this that I need. This is what I have that I can offer to you. And we can actually have a dialogue and go back and forth. When you come with your pockets turned out, and shoulder shrugs staring at the ceiling, you gonna get whatever somebody feels like giving you that.
Exactly. And that's why when we talk about it, about the cuts that Trump is looking to do.
Yeah.
How much was that?
10.6 billion. Something I know in after school programs alone, but they're talking about close to 800 billion when it comes to overall medical research, development, care systems, and all that stuff, because they want to divert that money to the defense and to border control.
And so then when you create the propaganda and you create because we've seen it before, the fear factor. And, okay, we're going to get bombed and it's going to happen to us.
Yeah.
We're the next target, so this is what we have to do. And then we give up all our rights and we say do whatever to protect us because Americans are so in fear of what is to come,
yes.
the inevitable, right? You then have a situation to where when you look at all of this constant current, this constant wave, you're trying to tell me that it's best for Black America to wait on someone to decide, you know what? Them 500 or some years we treated you guys like shit. You guys are right.
Yeah.
Like finally they're going to wake up from all of the police murder. Finally they're going to wake up from all of the mass incarceration. Finally they're going to wake up for all the carnage, all the disabling in our community. Finally they're going to say, you know what? We do have a problem because we had a lot to do to initiate the cause of what your issue is currently. We honestly believe that's going to happen. The fool's gold that we go for is honestly thinking a system cares for people that it oppressed, for people that they felt were inferior, were people that they, made to feel inferior, but knew they were superior because they understood what we was worth. We don't know what we're worth. So in general, I've always said the only way you defeat a system is create your own system. And that's why Black folks need to be more in the turn of how can we collectively create systems, mass systems, because without a mass amount of systems, when we talk about mass, we're looking at white folks got mass communication, right? Yeah. Mass education, mass incarceration. Everything is in mass. Yeah. Mass media outlets. Yeah. What do we have in mass?
Nothing.
Okay, we have nothing in mass.
We have mass victimhood. We got that in bulk.
It's Costco style on that. And it's not to make light or fun, but it's like, come on, guys. Well, like, hear us out and understand that when you have when you're viable and you have value, when you have value in self, when you come to the table, like the NBA player, you're 6'8", you're 240, and you got a wicked jump shot. Guess what? There is value to you. I'll do whatever you need me to do to put you in a place of success because I know you're going to create me more money. And we need to start looking at the value of who we are. We built this country. They came to our country and took us, enslaved us because they saw everything they needed to see and say, yo, these are the people that can create our own dynasty.
Well, I think to get a big picture viewpoint of where we are in the system and the structure of this nation, let's just say worst case scenario, there's the big world war. Oh. And if China took over the United States, or if a Middle Eastern faction took over the United States, or North Korea took over the United States, all would potentially be better situations for Black people.
Why do you say that?
Because
please break that down.
Because none of those nations have a history shared like we do. Like there was a gentleman who was addressing, he was a Chinese gentleman, and he was addressing while he was trying to get his people in position here. They were there, and so he was addressing and said, "Well, you guys came over and you're getting your foothold in business. Like how do you get on over here? Like how do you guys working?" He said, "Our job is simple." He said, "We come over and we create a product that we know is viable in this market, that's better than our Caucasian counterparts version, and we become in demand, and that's how we get leverage and we move forward." They said, we get ourselves in position enough, get our paper up and put ourselves in position. That's how we will gradually take over and dominate. That was his goal. He said, "Well, what about other groups here?" He said, "We're not worried about other groups." He said, "Well, what about Black people here?" He said, "I'm not worried about Black people." He said, "Black people are going to follow whoever's in charge."
Wow.
He said, so whether it be us or whether it be them, referring to white people, He said, Black people are just going to fall in line with whomever. When you start talking about other groups across the planet, when they refer to the beast that is America,
yes, sir,
they're not referring to Black people.
Not at all.
Because most of them they're more frustrated with Black people that so many of us keep buying into this system.
Yes.
Asian nations mainly look down upon Black people for classist reasons, but don't share the history.
Not at all.
That degree of I hate you, which is present in a lot of Caucasian, isn't present in Middle Easterners, present in Indian, present in Asian, present in Latin America. It's not present there. Mm-hmm. So if any other group came in, worst case scenario, we're in the same boat we're in now.
Wow, and it could possibly be that.
And it could be a slight bit better because those other groups don't come with the hatred. They look at us as, can you help? Can you make my situation better? Can you get on board with what we're doing? If you can, fine. You know, like I've said before, and I said it in joking, but I thought it to be true. The way that black people are treated in America, black people specifically, you would think that if you were of the other group, because you can't send us back. No. Let's just put that out there. You can't send us back. If one of these other groups came with that and said, look, we recognize your history. We recognize the way you've been treated. You can either side with us or stay the way that you are. The mentality should really be, is the enemy of my enemy my friend? You get one of these Islamic terrorist groups that really get enough numbers up and start hollering at black people on that level. Look, we want to overthrow this whole system. Like we're here to topple the American system, the American structure.
But
now I know a lot of us are so plugged in.
No, Negroes would not. This would be the time. See, I think the Negro is always trying to show Daddy they belong, and show Daddy we got their back. The Negro would run around and tell Daddy the exact same plan. Negroes ain't ready to get off the plantation.
Black people would set up Middle Easterners like they set up, like we set ourselves up.
Yeah, why not?
All those slave revolts that got snitched out.
Because even in the plight of Colin Kaepernick taking his stand, how was it just Negroes just saying, you know what? It's not about the flag right now. It's just about black people. Forget the flag. Negroes had to argue the fact. Had the Negro sat there and took a knee all throughout the NFL, it wouldn't be a story of the foul rule, radical Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah.
It would have been a story about the violence that black America suffers in the root of white supremacy and racism. So these kind of things, when you look at it, we don't take stands like that no more, and we don't want to get out of this system that we're so used to. It's almost like taking a child away from their mother. You know what I'm saying? Especially when the mother is breastfeeding. That's not happening. You know? So we've gotten so used to being given or being told by daddy daycare that another group tell us, hey, come ride with us. Man, not possible. No way. Couldn't happen.
I think that'd be interesting. I think that we have to start paying attention to what goes on in our own backyard. We have a really great ability to assess what somebody else is doing in their household, how dirty their windows are, how their grass isn't cut, or how they need to do a little tighten up the paint job. But when it comes to our own house, we have all of a sudden, you know, we can't find our glasses.
Yeah.
And so I think that when we start noticing these things that are going on, and we find ourselves having this energy that we want to direct to these other nations and these other people, and that's amazing to have that compassion and that empathy for any lost soul anywhere on this planet. But you might want to just take the moment to ask myself, ask yourself, ask your people, when I see these atrocities happening at home, do I have that same degree of concern? Or do I pick and choose who I have empathy and compassion for? So when we see these things out here that we acknowledge, that we think about, and that we see play out, and that we, you know, think that we need to give a head nod, give a new profile pic, or send on Instagram, don't be afraid to say something too.
Yes, sir.
Say Something Podcast. Barry, where can folks find you social media wise?
Barry Accius Facebook, Barry Accius Twitter, and of course Team Void Instagram, blackblueprints.com. Get your Black Blueprint apparel.
I'm Jermaine Morris on Facebook. Every other social media platform, it is at JMorrisCEO. It's been Say Something Podcast with Barry Accius.
Yes, sir.
And myself, Jermaine Morris. And until next show, we'll holler at you later.
Indeed.